innovations in community health. Basically, we have one team of dietitians who will be talking about malnutrition, and another one who is working with a team that is about to invent a new device controlling water balance. So these are very interesting presentations, and I hope you get to enjoy them. Basically, each presenter will get 15 minutes to present their work, and at the end, there will be questions. Because we only have 2 presentations in this session, the questions will go on for up to 8 minutes. This session is being live streamed on the Ustream over in this camera, and there will be a Twitter feed going on for this session as well. So we may also get questions on the Twitter feed. Basically, in terms of sliding, I will raise up a few signs to indicate certain time points in the presentation. So if there's 5 minutes to go before the presentation ends, I will give a nod and hold this sign up. 2 minutes to go, 2 nods, hold this sign up. And if it's time up, you get this beep, I hold the sign up, and I'll tell you to stop. Basically, we want to try to keep everything to strict timing. It's very strict. The sessions only go for 60 minutes, and you can imagine what it would be like if we actually have 3 papers in the one session. Okay, so on to the first presentation. And basically, the first presentation will come from a group of dietitians who are doing the Bachelor of Nutrition and Dietetics at Monash University. Caroline, Gloria, Wesley, Vivian, Leung, Wong, and Tsang. And they will be talking about investigating prevalence and social causes of malnutrition within community-dwelling older adults. So would you like to come up stage and get everything set up? Your time will start when you start speaking.
Good morning, everyone. I am Ashley, and this is Gloria, Vivian, Wesley, Ivy, and Caroline. We are here today to disseminate the findings of a project we have undertaken in the Mornington Peninsula Shire, which is located southeast of Melbourne, as you can see on the map. Come up. Wow. Oh. Wow. So within the Shire, Peninsula Health is the major healthcare provider. And in this presentation, we shall refer to the Mornington Peninsula Shire as the Shire. Our project investigates the issue of malnutrition amongst community-dwelling older adults. There are 3 parts to our project. Firstly, we determine the prevalence of malnutrition risk amongst our target group. And secondly, we examine the social causes of malnutrition that are specific to the Shire. Lastly, we explore the attitudes of Peninsula Health dietitians in regards to malnutrition. So what exactly is malnutrition? Malnutrition is defined as the imbalance between nutrient intake and requirement. Our project focuses on undernutrition, which is the negative imbalance. This occurs when people do not eat enough to meet their requirements. We decided to undertake this study as current literature has found a significant 10 to 30% prevalence of malnutrition amongst adults living in the community. To add to this, malnutrition risk increases with age. As you can see from this next slide here, the Shire has a higher proportion of older adults as compared to Greater Melbourne. Hence, this suggests that the prevalence of malnutrition in this area could be higher. It is well known that clinical factors such as a lack of appetite and early satiety do contribute to malnutrition. However, coming from a public health perspective, we hypothesize that the social environment plays a significant role in the development of malnutrition. Hence, this should be explored particularly as there's lack of evidence in this area. Lastly, Peninsula Health community health dietitians currently receive limited referrals from partnered hospitals for malnutrition. However, the reasons behind such low referral rates are unknown. Overall, there are currently no available data to investigate these gaps in knowledge in the target population.
So as mentioned by Ashley, the first part of our project was to determine the prevalence of malnutrition risks in the Shire. So to do this, we recruited participants from Peninsula Health Community Health Centres and also hospitals. All of our participants were aged 65 years and above, and they lived in independent housing within the Shire. Participants who were recruited from the hospital must also be admitted into the hospital for less than 3 days. This ensured that being in the hospital had as little influence on their nutritional status as possible. So to assess their malnutrition risk, we used a modified version of the malnutrition screening tool. And as you can see, there are 3 questions in this tool. First on weight loss, second on appetite, and lastly on whether the client is comfortable with their own weight. So all clients who score 2 or more on this tool are classified as being at risk of malnutrition. So there were a total of 185 participants in our 8-week project, and the prevalence of malnutrition risk determined within this sample was 20%. This rate is similar to that of an Australian study, which used the same tool and included participants from the same age group as ours, and they determined the prevalence to be 15%. So now, we have determined that a significant proportion of our target group is at risk of malnutrition. It is therefore important to look at the social causes of this problem. These can then be addressed through community-based strategies, and which will help prevent malnutrition.
So what exactly are social determinants of health? So the World Health Organization defines it as the conditions in which a person is born, grows, lives, works, and ages, and these are largely shaped by the distribution of money, power, and resources at a global, national, and local level. And these on the screen are showing social determinants of health. And these social determinants of health have been shown in literature to impact on one's nutritional status. In the second part of our project, we looked at whether or not these social determinants of health impacted on nutritional status, and to do this, we developed an assessment tool which consisted of 9 questions, and they looked at the 3 highlighted determinants, which include transport, social isolation and support, and also financial insecurity. In addition to that, we also looked at the views of clients towards eating. So in our study, we followed up 16 clients who were identified to be at risk of malnutrition, and they completed the survey through either phone or face-to-face interviews. So firstly, looking at transport, a small portion of clients indicated that they did have difficulties accessing shops, and a significant larger portion actually, rely on other people to drive them to shops or buy food for them. A little over a quarter of the clients can drive, however, this portion is likely to decrease due to the effects of ageing. This is because evidence has shown that the skills required for safe driving start to deteriorate around the ages of 55. In addition, the Shire has a total of 8 bus routes, and most of which only run every 1 to 2 hours, and some areas have no access at all. So with that, we can say that with the limited public transport routes as well as the data we have found, we can say that travelling around the Shire can be especially difficult for the elderly. In terms of financial insecurity, in previous reports it has been shown that the inability to afford food has been an issue within the Shire. However, we didn't find this in our study, and this is likely due to the fact that people who do say yes to completing the survey through face or phone interviews are unlikely to be burdened by financial insecurity. In terms of social support, the majority of the clients that we surveyed received some type of support, and these include meal preparation or travelling to shops, and looking at social interaction. A lot of the clients we surveyed actually said that they don't participate in social gatherings regularly, and because evidence has shown that decreased social contact is related to feelings of loneliness and therefore a lack of motivation to eat, we can say that clients who do not participate in social gatherings regularly within the Shire are at risk of malnutrition due to decreased food intake. Lastly, looking at perception, however, half the clients that we surveyed indicated that they were unsure or believed that eating less was a normal part of ageing, and a lot of them actually said, why do I need to eat when I'm not moving around as much anymore? So with that, we need to look into the nutritional knowledge of the elderly population, which to actually address the knowledge gap, which ultimately influences food choice.
So there were a few strengths to the methods that we used to assess the rate of malnutrition. So firstly, the more MC tool that we used was quick and easy to which increased the general participation by clients without the need for much training or instruction on the part of the health practitioners who were actually the ones who were initiating the tool. So this was also good in the case of some of the clients who fell through the gaps and did not complete it appropriately, as it was simple and easy enough for us to complete it over the phone. So it was simple to perform. A key limitation of the More MSD tool was that it was adapted from the malnutrition screening tool, which was actually a tool that's validated for hospital settings and has not yet been validated for use in community settings. So moreover, the population that we surveyed was actually based on users of the Peninsula Health Services, which means that they were more likely to be malnourished or have their nutritional status influenced by medical rather than social causes. So regarding the social determinants tool, despite the fact that we had a large sample size of clients that we identified to be malnourished, a great proportion of them chose either not to participate or could not be contacted for follow-up. So this had a great impact on our results at the end. So this meant that we were only able to interview a total of 16 people for our social determinants tool, and as such makes it quite difficult for effective conclusions to be drawn. So some recommendations that would be appropriate in improving future data collection would include modifying the MSTs to include certain social factors. So we found that it was a bit difficult for more MSTs to distinguish whether or not weight loss was actually caused by medical or social causes. So we feel that in future projects it would be amended somewhat to include certain social factors such as transport status, financial status, so as to be able to better identify people who are at risk of malnutrition. As previously mentioned also, our research did not take into account people who did not use the Peninsula Health Services, and as such we were not able to get a representative picture of the population. As such, a lot of our clients that we interviewed were usually at risk of malnutrition because of medical causes. So future research should actually take up other social groups such as those people using meals or meals or other forms of social support services, so as to get a good understanding of the larger picture within the And thirdly, individuals interviewed as part of this project were found to have a varying level of health literacy, and many of them had different views of what healthy eating practices were. So some of these views, such as the general acceptance that eating less is a normal part of aging, may contribute to reduced eating and potentially lead to malnutrition. And this would be an issue that's further explored in future research.
So now I'm going to talk about the third part of our presentation, which is a dietitian survey. So we developed a dietitian survey to explore the attitude of Peninsula Health dietitians and their current practice towards malnutrition. This was because community health dietitians report that they currently receive limited malnutrition referrals from the hospital, and this survey helps to investigate the reason of this issue. The survey consists of 31 questions, and we use SurveyMonkey to distribute the questions to all Peninsula Health dietitians. We received a total of 17 surveys, and we use it to conduct our analysis. And from our result, we find that there are issues with malnutrition screening and referrals. 37% of dietitians reflect that malnutrition screening is rarely or never completed at their workplace. The main reason for incompletion is because malnutrition screening is not a priority for staff responsible. According to a randomized cluster trial, malnutrition screening is considered as a low priority for nursing staff. In terms of referrals, 71% of dietitians felt that they received inadequate referrals at their workplace. The main reason for inadequate referral is poor identification by other health professionals. According to a randomized control trials, only 5 to 34% of malnourished patients were currently identified by other health professionals and referred to a dietitian for intervention. 90% of them agree that a more efficient referral system is required to capture malnourished patients. And for perceptual factors impacting malnutrition, the survey indicated that lifestyle and social factors were ranked as the second most influential cause of malnutrition. Our data suggests that among social factors, social isolation, poverty, and poor health literacy were perceived to have the highest impact on malnutrition. However, this may not apply specifically to the older adults living in the Shire. And for discharge planning, most dietitians agree that malnutrition will still be a problem for majority of their patients post-discharge. However, only 50% of them stated that they often referred a malnourished patient to a community dietitian post-discharge. This indicated that some of the patients may have left untreated after discharge from hospital.
There are a few strengths and limitations to the dietitian survey. One strength of the survey was the inclusion of both qualitative and quantitative questions. However, unfortunately, many of these questions were misinterpreted, and it was not possible to quantify from their responses the number of malnutrition referrals that would be considered enough. Despite the effective and efficient distribution of the survey via SurveyMonkey, there was a low participation rate. Additionally, their responses may not be what dietitians actually do, but their perception of what should be done, making it difficult to get an accurate reflection of the situation. The results of the survey did, however, highlight the need to improve the client referral rates between hospital and community by establishing a more efficient referral pathway. It would also be beneficial to increase other health professionals' awareness, such as nurses, of the need and importance in identifying and treating malnutrition. This would help to improve the screening rates within the hospital and increase the number of malnutrition referrals made to dietitians.
In summary, we found that the prevalence of malnutrition risk amongst the target group is highly significant at 20%. Our findings suggested inadequate transport, social isolation, and the lack of nutritional knowledge are probable causes of malnutrition. In addition to this, inadequate screening and hence referrals in the hospital setting are likely to have resulted in the lack of referrals in the community setting. Even though this research has raised more questions than it has answered, the information collected unlocks the potential for a great deal of future research in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving a really interesting presentation on malnutrition within the community. If you'd like to stand up in front of the audience, please. It's only for 8 minutes, don't worry. Are there any questions on the presentation? Yeah.
I just have one. So, in terms of the people that you were studying in sort of your sample, do they all kind of from one area within the Shire, or were they from throughout the Shire? Throughout the Shire, yeah.
We didn't really pick according to their location. It's more who was accessing the services, but in the end, the sample turned out to be spread around the Shire.
Yep.
So the survey was directed towards professionals in the industry, not towards the community, right? Just want to get that clear.
We had two. We had one survey for the dietitians within the hospital, because we found that there weren't many referrals being received for our community health, despite malnutrition being quite prevalent in the hospital and also in the community, and so that wasn't really being picked up. And so we surveyed the dietitians for that reason, and we also surveyed who had been identified to be at risk of malnutrition and looked at kind of the social and environmental factors.
So it's only really the younger people, professionals that we can use or survey through the internet, right?
Yes. Yeah, the dietitians.
I'm curious, so if the dietitians weren't getting referrals for malnutrition from the hospitals mainly, what were they mainly getting referrals for? Because if it would have been in terms of my guess would be it'd probably be obesity or weight issues, and I'm wondering if that's actually a reflection. Do you guys think that's a reflection of social attitudes towards malnourishment and obesity in general?
Yeah, so definitely I think referrals in terms of the community, they're getting more like diabetes. If they're professionally diagnosed with diabetes, they're getting referred to a dietitian, diabetes educators and things like that. Whereas malnutrition, if it's not picked up in hospital properly, it's not actually getting referred on.
And with obesity, usually in the hospital setting, dietitians don't actually see patients who are obese.
Right.
It's less of a priority. A lot of them are referred to the community for that purpose, but because the waiting line is very long, so even then it's not really a priority for them. So, but in terms of your question, I do think that obesity, as a whole, we do think obesity does make a lot of, older people think they don't need to eat that much because of social media and all that. So yeah, there is an influence.
Any other questions? Yep. Just a very question to ask. You said that in your second part of the study that financial insecurity is not a factor in malnutrition. I'm just wondering if you have any statistics or evidence to show that, because I couldn't really see any evidence.
We did not find that it was a problem within our samples, which was quite small, 16. 16 participants that we did the survey for the social determinants.
So do you think it's a bit of a limitation to say, using your small sample size, that financial insecurity is not a factor? Were you expecting that?
Yeah, we were expecting it to be a problem because we've had previous studies that have shown that it is a problem within the Shire. However, that wasn't what we found just because of our sample size and also the sample population as well.
We did acknowledge that our small sample size was a limitation, that we can't draw concrete conclusions. And that was one of the limitations of our study. But it was the first study, so it was kind of like a pilot, so we need to begin somewhere.
Okay, yep, I see. So, is there any, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, because I just want to clarify that. So the thing is that we had 57% of people who did not even, they refused for a lot of time. So we were thinking that a lot of the time people with financial insecurity, they might have a greater tendency not to want to complete the survey. And in that sense, we were only looking at people who did not have much information in that area. So it's you in that sense. So they could have potential.
So you're definitely thinking that this study is going to be extended into bigger sample size in the future?
Yes.
Yep. Any more questions? Any questions from the social media? No. Okay, that's about it. Thank you very much for So our next presentation is from Bradley Allsopp from Medicine, Nursing and Health Science at Monash University. And he will be talking about, in the presentation, the closed loop control of water balance. Take it away. Okay. All good.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Hey everyone. So my name is Brad, and I'm studying medicine over here at Monash over at Clayton campus at Monash Centre. And I took a year off after fourth year this year to do an honours year. My supervisor, who's a genius over at the intensive care unit, thought it'd be a fun idea to control water balance, which I didn't really know a lot about. So I'll just explain what I've been doing this year. So I'll be going through the theory of what water balance is, how you might evaluate water loss in a hospital setting, a proposal for the automation of the control, and the device details that I built. So, water balance is really about cell volume. So the recommendation to sort of drink 8 glasses of water a day is sort of just a general guide, because normally your body controls water balance itself. And what it's really trying to control is the volume of all your cells. And this is really important in the brain. You can see in the diagram there, because the brain is sort of like a rigid box. If all the brain cells were to expand to sort of even like 10%, they'll squish each other and die, and you get permanent brain damage. And this actually happens in the hospital. So the normal process is that osmoreceptors, which detect changes in osmolarity or the concentration of particles, they respond, and then they communicate with the kidney, and the kidney produces more water relative to the salt. And the main determinant of cell volume is extracellular volume. So you have the body is split up into sort of 2 compartments. If you think about sort of like a bunch of grapes floating around in a bath, the extracellular environment is the bath water, and has the same saltiness as the grapes. And if you were to tip a whole bunch of salt into the bath, then all the grapes would shrivel up. So that's the sort of way that the body detects sort of cell size and controls that. So when you come along and take a blood sample of a patient and you say, right, so the bath water is this salty, then you can infer from that how big the cells are, rather than sort of taking the cells and measuring how big they are, which is not possible to 70 trillion. In clinical practice, this is a term. This is called tonicity, the changing of the relative strength of one solution across a membrane. And this is a little bit misunderstood by lots of doctors, and they often think about osmolarity, which is, imagine if you could have, say, urea, for example, if you put urea in the bath, that goes into the grapes, it doesn't affect the size of the grapes. And that's not really well understood by a lot of doctors. And so this is a large sort of reason why we're looking at doing this. And the second reason for doing this project was just looking at other industries, for example, like automation and manufacturing. You wouldn't think it'd be reasonable to get in a 747 and have an artist, a pilot who's really experienced in the field to take you across continents these days. It's like, well, just turn the autopilot, please. I'd like to get there safely at exactly 9:42. And same with automation, you have a multi system process where you have raw ingredients going into a funnel, and then out comes the product. And it's unreasonable to expect experienced technicians in white coats at every step of the process, taking notes and making decisions at the bedside. And so this device is really about synthesizing what it is the doctors do, making a bunch of rules, giving the rules to the computer, and seeing if the computer can do it. This is just a little bit about the sample that we take from the blood. So when the patient first comes, you get a blood sample, and that tells you the sodium, concentration of sodium in the blood. And that's not exactly equal to the saltiness of the bath. And this is just a study from the 50s, which identified that that's not exactly equal to the saltiness of the bath, even though doctors are still using that value of just the sodium. So part of the study was looking at the evidence and work out what is the actual way we should be doing this. And these numbers, 1.11 and 25.6, they're affected by a number of things, and the device takes those into account while it's operating. So essentially what we want to do is monitor what is coming in and out of the bath. So if you open up the plug and you were to get pure water coming out, you would know that the bath water was becoming more salty. And when the bath water becomes more salty, the water becomes smaller, and so then you can work out what's happening in the situation. So you have the patient who initially comes in, and you take their blood sample, and then you know how big the bath is. And then what the machine does is it just watches the drain and says, all right, so over this hour we lost this much salt, and so we probably know how big the cells are. So next hour we should probably give this much fresh water to sort of restore it back to equilibrium. And this is the thought process that would be going on in the mind of a sort of an experienced ICU clinician. So here's just a diagram explaining that. So there's the Lego man with a certain saltiness. Imagine him as the bath. And then the way that the practice actually occurs in the hospital is you have a fluid balance chart. So you're just measuring the volume of the liquid coming out of the bath, but not looking at how salty the liquid is. And you can understand that if you lose brine from the bath, then the cells will become bigger because the water in the bath is becoming more dilute, and water is entering the cells and expanding. So often it's looked at the sort of indiscriminate water coming out. So we thought, well, why don't we just detect the saltiness of the water coming out of the patient, which is of course the urine. That's one of the main losses of water, and then it can just record as it's going and know how much water is coming out. So the urine loss is just one of the losses of water. As I'm talking now, I've got sort of water vapor, steam coming out of my hot presentation voice, in mouth, and I've got you know, maybe a little bit of perspiration, losing some water through my skin. And also when I metabolize glucose into carbon dioxide and water, that's water that's being added to my system as well. So if I had a high metabolic rate, then I'm producing a lot more water and I'm diluting myself essentially. And so these things are sort of quantifiable. If I have a body surface area of 173 meters squared, then I'm going to lose more water through my skin than someone who has a smaller body surface area. And these things can be actually measured from papers, you know, based on age and weight. So that's what happens at the start of the program. And the main elements of the device, an ion detector for the liquid coming out of the bath, a volume detector for the urine, which is normally done by sort of a volume, like a floppy bag with lines on it. I made a different sensor to do that that's a bit more accurate. The central processing unit, which is an Arduino microprocessor, and an infusion regulator, which is a volumetric drip, a gravitational drip, to control the hourly rate of dextrose. And dextrose, of course, is just glucose in water, and glucose is metabolized to water and carbon dioxide, so it's really just like liquid. So the hypothesis is, can you control the cell volume you know, as good as a doctor? And to evaluate that, we'll be taking sodium values from the patient throughout the day. In ICU, it's maybe sort of every couple of hours. And then we'll be comparing that with the population from the actual same unit, taking the same measurements, and seeing if A, you can predict what the sodium is of the patient, B, if you can sort of converge on a target value, which is considered normal for a patient, and then can it beat the doctor? So the device. The first part is the ion concentration. The electrolytes are electrically conductive. And so a simplistic diagram on the top there just shows that the urine comes in contact with the circuit. The circuit detects how salty it is and it communicates that it's going to be grown. That's the actual circuit there that I built. The volume detector, rather than sort of, there's a number of ways you can detect volume. There's a number of ways you can detect volume. So visually by counting drips or by using peristaltic pumps and other means. But the way I went with, oh sorry, it's got the words there. I got some digital scales, shipped over from China for $6 and pulled out this little unit on the inside, which is called a force transducer. And mass normally sits on this part, which is suspended, and it's fixed at the other end. And then as the beam flexes, it puts out a signal which is proportional to the mass. So that then communicates with the brain as well, and as the flexion in that beam increases, the signal increases, and we know that the urine production has increased. And we correlate that with the saltiness of the urine to work out exactly what water loss we're losing. So if the bath is losing salty water that's the same saltiness as the bath at 200 litres per hour, which is unreasonable, it wouldn't affect the size of the grapes, really. But if it's losing brine or fresh water, that's what we're interested in. So that's what the device looks at. Dextrose administration, we have the normal way you give fluid in the ICU is just with a bag running by gravity, about sort of 3.5 worth of water pressure into the veins. And so we did want to have a pump pumping it in, just on the off chance that the device didn't work and it wanted to overdo it. So it's a regular drip and clamp, and so the mass is detected in the bag, and then when every hour when a certain mass is being reached, we then just clamp it off. Just a simple way. And if the device powers off, we just go a safety switch so that accidentally get too much. So really the implications for this are many and potentially lucrative. So reduced over-administration of dextrose. When you come into the hospital, there is a risk that your doctor will give you too much water, which is okay. You could drink 10 glasses of water in the next hour and you would pee lots. But a lot of patients in the hospital aren't able to do that for themselves. That's why they're in hospital. And so they might get neurological damage. So the benefit of this is because when you first come in, you'll be monitoring sort of small changes, and so you'll rather than having to like come along and pick a train up that's fallen off the bridge, you'll be able to see when it starts to get a bit rocky and then slow it down. We have more closely controlled surgery, which is aid for health dysregulation and sort of save lives, and also be cost effective for the hospital. So, just to conclude, water balance is important and well understood. By well understood, I mean we know what we're doing. We know, just like the Boeing 747, we know how to fly a plane. But that's not to say that everyone knows how to fly a plane. It's just that we can teach a computer to fly the plane. It's determined by ions in the urine, and the automated system might improve water balance in the hospital, which would be a good thing. And we've sort of constructed the device. Well, yeah, me and my supervisor have constructed the device, a program to sort of link everything together and take all the sensors and then decide on the volume to give. And I've not actually plugged into a real patient yet. I've got waiting area in ICU to do this week. But I've run it long-term simulations and with different clinical scenarios that you might expect, and it's performed as expected. So things are promising. So here's a diagram of sort of the system with the different elements, taking the sensors, processing it, making a decision, sort of modelling the patient as the bath, and then giving the water. And the machine does that. It doesn't really know that it's actually affecting the patient, but the idea is that the patient will be able to be controlled on that system. Here is a picture of the device itself. So that left-hand picture sits underneath the bed and collects the urine over time. As the urine passes from the patient into the collecting system, there's a little detector which has 2 probes in the urine.
Okay, unfortunately we'll have to stop there. Thank you very much for giving us a really good presentation on water balance. And would you like to applaud him? Are there any questions from the audience? Hang for a while. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, please can you continue explaining how exactly it works and how it's...
Yep, go ahead.
So that box there filled with coloured wires has another one of these Arduino processors, and that does the sort of the brains of it. And the way that it works is it has a program that it just cycles through about 30,000 times a minute, and just sort of making small changes, and then from that communicating to the other side of the box. Here that's a servo motor, so like you have on a model aeroplane, and that just twists and kinks the grip on and off. On the front you've got an LCD, which is here, and that displays the current variables, and the twister is just a variable resistor, and the button lets you access the menu sort of system with a couple of tiers, so you can say, I'd like to edit glucose, and the patient is 220 kilograms, and then you click go, and it says, I'd like to pump 156.05 exactly mils of dextrose, and then it proceeds to do that.
Is that in terms of your explanation of your machine? Pardon? Is that you finish explaining the explanation of your machine?
Yeah, essentially. Let's have a question.
Oh, yeah, cool. Are there any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if this actually takes into account other food processes, such as if you have diarrhea or if you have electrolyte loss or like fluid loss and all that. Does this take into account those factors also?
Great question. Really important question. Remember with the bath how if you're losing, you just open up the normal bath tap and you're losing what's the same concentration as the bath, it doesn't matter. That's really important for vomiting and for diarrhea, because most types of vomiting and diarrhea have the same salt use as the body, fortunately. If otherwise you have to sort of vomit into the you can clean other fluids and look at them too. That is an error, and it's not exactly equal to the saltiness of the body. But at the same time, it's an improvement on clinical practice, which is currently to just sort of just look at it and then go, I'm still going to give my 2 liters a day.
Yeah.
You said you run simulations to start working as required. Is that just a virtual simulation, or do you put different solutions in the test bag and see what it physically does?
Yeah, well, the calibrators are the sensors, so they're able to do accurate detection. But the simulation essentially was this, but you just do that to the patient. So this runs itself and it simulates it. So I increase the speed at which the simulation operates. So instead of running at 1 second per second, it runs at 3,600 seconds per second, which is a second every hour. And so you can see if you start a patient off way off course and putting out the urine that's briny, and then it prints out onto the computer screen through a serial port what all the variables are. So you can see after the first hour, the theoretical patient, a little imagining bubble, their sodium after 1 hour was this, and then after 2 hours was this. So it seems to all appearances to work. But as I said, it's sort of internally satisfying. So yes, it's no way of knowing to test it.
So, I mean, effectively it's a feedback loop, but then the human is actually part of that feedback loop.
Yes.
So you have to, I mean, it's difficult to set a big enough delay so that the changes you make in the person are going to be influenced in the detector.
Yeah, that's a good question. So when you tip a bucket of cold water into the bath, the cells don't automatically just go and expand. The rate at which fluid goes from the extracellular to the intracellular is proportional to the difference between their concentrations. And I found a nice paper that had that exact rate. So when the model simulates those two fluids, every minute it goes through and says, all right, we've lost 1 minute's worth of urine, we've lost 1 minute's worth of skin water. And then it shifts that into the cellular environment at the rate that would actually happen in a real person. Every hour it makes a decision about how much to pump, and then it sticks to that in its program for the next hour. So if you were to start the device and then pee out lots and lots of fresh water, then you might get a bit off track, but at the end of that hour it would say, oh, he's actually doing this, and then the next hour it would correct for that. So sort of an hour by hour sort of correction.
Any other questions? Okay. I just have a question. You described a bit about the device, but I'm wondering, what would you use this device for? Would you use this device for certain diseases or certain emergency cases? Where would its uses be?
Good question. You can use it for anyone because there's lots and lots of causes of just derangements in water balance. But the treatment is always the same, which is just to look at what the patient's currently doing and sort of give things to correct it, and then why it's happening. So every patient is able to do it. It is limited because the patient needs to have intravenous access and there needs to be have a catheter in. And also, if they're eating oral and you don't know what they're eating, you can't exactly control it. It's like someone's coming along with things in the bath without you noticing. But if you know what they're eating, say, for example, if they have a tube into their stomach and you can see exactly what's going in for an hour, absolutely that is, that's okay. But if they have a hamburger at 9 p.m.,
well, you can't really
have this device as a main
range and stuff. Just wondering as well, have you tested this device on an animal model? So on a mouse or a rat, for instance?
No.
Right. So
I've got we did, I suppose, sort of think about, it's impractical because having the maths that is around the I suppose it is doable.
Yeah.
But I've got therapeutic goods administration approval, and I've got a clinical trial notice. So I've got full approval from the Australian government to conduct the trial. So, so yeah, because it's gone through ethics approval and all that, it's not just like
yeah, it's like you do it and see what happens. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we're nearly out of time for questions. So thank you, Bradley, for presenting a really good presentation. And that is about it for this session, Innovations in Community Health. So we basically have the next sessions starting at 10:15 a.m. So session 2, so there'll be a session upstairs in this building, going through some engineering and stuff. There'll be another session in Building 26, D12A, which will be a joint presentation between Monash and Singapore Management University. And we will also have a presentation over here in this room talking about